we're going to go and we've danced around it long enough, so now we're going to talk about the stadium. And I know you're desperate to get it off your chest, David. Len's going to lead on that for us.
David, you've made a number of statements, including your previous chair. In terms of just figure work, so, I mean, in terms of, like, we can talk about figures, but figures we recognise in terms of the total cost of the stadium from the Olympics onwards. Do you know what I mean? It's a big,
from the Olympics onwards,
it's a big figure. So let's see if we get some agreement on the figures. So in terms of, there was an estimate at one time, I think, of a new stadium at a cost of 250 million. 3 years on from hosting the games, that stadium costs tripled to 752. Yes? We got that evidenced. This was the...
I'm trying to think how you get to 752.
Shall I give you a helpful summary, David? Because
please do that.
I think the idea...
I anticipated this, so I wrote it down before we went down. So the original bid estimate was 250 million, so that was back in 2004. So land values are different, construction costs are different. We accept that was going to go up. The completion cost of the Olympic Stadium was 429.
Yep.
The original contract to Balfour Beatty to convert the stadium was 154 million, so that took the estimated cost to 583. After that, we had an extra 36 million given to Balfour Beatty because of problems over the retractable seating and the roof, which takes it to 619. Then in June of this year, the LLDC announced that the contracts for the transformation now sat at 272 million. So the 272 plus the 429, which was the completion cost, takes you to 701. And then we had the announcement a few weeks ago of an extra 51 million, which we are led to believe is associated with the seating. So that takes you up to a cost now of 752 million.
Right, now, let's zone in to the 51 million.
Yes.
In all that, in terms of that, you've made no public statement. That's been reported, or we couldn't find a public statement. Is that a figure you accept on the 51 million increase in terms of that were reported in the media last month? Presumably someone leaked it to the media or gave it to the media. We don't assume it was you or your organisation. So do you recognise this figure?
Yes, so just to help you slightly further, so we made the announcement of the 272 in summer of 2015. We said at that time that there was still a lot of work to do. There was a year's plus work still to go till completion, and we said that we would not give a running commentary on it, but we committed that once the work was complete we would announce the final cost, which we expected to be this autumn. The information you're referring to, you're right, there was a leak wherever that came from, but the Mayor made a statement very soon after which confirmed the 323 number you're talking about, and I think referred to the 51 increase over what had been previously announced. So effectively those numbers were confirmed in that statement by the Mayor when he announced that there would be the investigation into the stadium. So I think the numbers are as you say. We're not arguing about those numbers. I think I would start by saying, I mean, I'll come on to the numbers in detail in a sec, but we are really the stadium has got completed, and in doing so we've had a series of really successful events. It is proving itself a really successful venue, I think, for major events. So last year, you'll know we had over 500,000 spectators in through the Rugby World Cup, through our first concert, through Rugby League internationals, all that before it opened permanently this year. You obviously go to West Ham matches, over 500,000 people have already attended this season, and that I think just shows how much it will be a major contributor to the legacy more broadly in the park, because it is a big part of creating a vibrant place, a visitor attraction, and bringing very large numbers of people, probably over 1 million people a year itself, into the area. And that does help. That is a really significant part of us creating a place where new businesses and house builders and all the aspects we want of a complete regeneration with new homes and jobs comes together. So that has absolutely happened. Now the costs are clearly, as we've said, are as you've described, and the Mayor announced that there would be an investigation into that. The increase of 51 is a combination. It is a lot of it is to do with the seating, which we can talk about more if you want. Some of it was things that were to sort of enhance the stadium for its long-term viability. So there were some conscious decisions to sort of make further investments. But I can go through that if that's
Please, let's give us, I mean, this is the chance to, as I think you said to the Assembly plenary, if I can recall rightly, that you wanted to give absolute clarity to the situation. This is the opportunity to do so, I think.
Okay. So the 27. So if we go through how the difference between the 272 and the 323 you referred to, and the 51 increase, a chunk of it was to do with the very unfortunate failure of the seating contractor who had been appointed to introduce the seating system. And that happened just before the Rugby World Cup last summer, so inopportune moment, and effectively, in the effort of installing the new seating system, the contractor failed and found were unable to meet the requirements of the contract, and we were left with a partially installed system with a Rugby World Cup imminent, with very large crowds and very high profile. And so had to sort of step in and make it ready for that event. It had actually been a joint venture, so one partner, but the main designer and installer of seating systems went bust. The other inherited it, but wasn't, I suppose, suitable long-term contractor. And so for the 2016, they took it forward during 2016, but we had to effectively settle out with them because they weren't suitable to provide that service long term, and it was only really for the 2016 the summer seat moves that we were able to do the first moves with a fully installed system and understand fully what that would involve. So the seating issues we've had, starting with the collapse of the appointed contractor in mid 2015, have caused about 21 million of that increase. So it's not all of the 51, it's about 21 is seating. The other parts are a chunk that were, I'm going to say, sort of discretionary further investment that E20, the joint venture between ourselves and Newham, agreed, which would enhance the long-term viability and the commercial sustainability of the stadium. So things like we put in enhancements to enable concert crowds and bigger concert crowds to come, so there's better gangways for concert movements. We've enhanced the lighting system so it can take more different sports. We've increased the robustness of the pitch to hold more events. There's the large screen, which you'll have seen at matches, which is a potential source of revenue from advertising and sponsorship. So all that came to about 14 million. So 21 related to the seats, 14 related to those enhancements. We had held some contingency, and we referred to that in the press release we did when we announced the 272. We said there was contingency. That was about 12 million, which we had to use for things that happened, but risks that had been anticipated. And then the balance, which is about 4 million, was basically insurances and our own management costs. So to give a complete picture, we've included our own costs of management. So the 51 is the 21 for the seats, the 14 for the discretionary enhancements, the am I coming to the right number? Yes, I think so. The 4 for insurance, and 12 with contingency.
So some of that would be revenue. The insurance would be revenue.
The insurance was
the one-off capital?
Well, sorry, Jerry will correct me on the accounting.
That was all capitalised.
Yeah, because it's a capital project. Yeah.
Right.
Even if you like what look like revenue costs of people and staff and things get capitalised on a capital project. So project management and that sort of thing all gets capitalised.
Yeah, they were project insurances specific to
the stadium works.
To the stadium works.
Now, just for clarity around the seating issue, what's the 8 million, there's me, I don't know if that was in the media, 8 million annual revenue costs reported in the media. Where does that figure come from? What do you think it is? We've got, we have a view of it, but you, so it's all associated with the so-called retractable seating, let's say the scaffolding seating, should we call it as it's the real word is, do you know what I mean? So what's that about, and is that an ongoing revenue commitment? So
what I just described was the finalisation of all the upfront capital, the transformation and those enhancements I referred to get the stadium sort of complete and opened this summer. The 8 million again was in the information that was leaked, and I'm not validating it completely, but it was an estimate of what the future. Well, no, I'll answer your question. I'm asking you a question.
Let's be fair to you. It's between 0.3 to 8 million, so somewhere in there. is the side of the
So what that's referring to is the cost of the annual, so annual as in both ways, moves for the whole seating system between football modes and athletics, or athletics or concerts. So it's the cost of moving seating back from pitch to athletics, all 4 stands, and then moving forward again at the end of the summer, ready for pitch sports again. So it's an estimate of the total costs of those seat moves, but I should say that is not a confirmed amount. We are in a tendering process at the moment actually for the long-term operator. We've literally just had the tenders in the last few days, so we'll know a real cost out of that, and that is why it is uncertain what that number will be. But I think again the Mayor's statement.
I'm so sorry.
The Mayor's statement, I think, referred to the issue around seating costs as one of the things that will be looked at in the review. So we're not pretending it's not an issue, but we will know firmly what the costs are in the near future.
Are there any more surprises and other costs than you think you could share with us at this stage?
I don't think there's any other surprises. We talked in the. I think if I'll answer a slightly different question in the interest of full and transparent. I think the challenges we're looking at going forward in relation to the business plan generally for the stadium. We've talked about the seating. I think it's well known that we talked. You were at the police and crime committee. There's some challenges around the operation in the very early days at the moment of the stadium operations, which we are working with, and I think has already got considerably better. And I think the crowd management arrangements have considerably improved. We talked, I think, then around the fact that Chris Allison's been working with us to make sure the egress arrangements get settled down. But that's the other challenge I'd refer to. But again, we've made really good progress there, and we're confident that we'll get into a steady state where that's not a significant ongoing burden.
You rightly referred to that earlier meeting. So the Police and Crime Committee was looking around issues of disturbance in policing and security issues around associated with the stadium. In terms of the cost of policing, as in we talked in terms of the stadium, the fact that the surrounding land of the stadium is private, is that when the police start charging you? As it's not a public highway, is it?
It's not.
The roads are presumably.
Correct. The roads are.
But the walkways are not public
Correct.
highways, are they?
Correct. So I think this did come, and I have to say this may be beyond my expertise because there's particular issues between the police and football clubs generally in the UK in play here. So we have got an agreement with the police now for the policing of the stadium, and the police do deploy to the park for major events. There's a match tonight. They will be deployed to support that. I think there is an issue generally being considered around the police's ability to recharge to deploy outside the stadiums on private land, and I think we will be
so that may
part
well,
of however that's resolved.
What I'm trying to get at is that may well be a further cost that you'll need to factor in.
It may be.
Maybe.
I think what we're working towards, and I think what we've been making good progress with all the partners, and a point that came through in that discussion, is that there are a range of partners working together on the arranged management of crowds, if you like, between the stations and the stadium and across the park. But the objective is that we minimise, if not completely remove, the need for the police to deploy at all, and that's where we're trying to get to. That the arrangements for the movement of spectators, their interface with everybody else going around their normal daily business, and the management of the stewarding and how that's deployed, that we won't need the significant police presence that there has been, not at all the games, but at a small number.
Okay. You will know that this committee, along with many others across the GLA, are always questioning about the transparency. We had it earlier on in the questions of not just your operations, but also other functional bodies of the GLA. It's not just you. Don't want anyone thinking that listening in, it's about you, that you're hiding from transparency. But the question I think we do need to ask, and we shouldn't wait for the report, is some of these costs, these extra costs, when did your organisation, not the stadium, I mean that might be my secondary question, when were you aware of these extra costs?
we're going back to the transformation, the capital.
Yeah, let's talk about transformation and the seating issue is the big, is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah. So
when was your organisation aware of that?
So if I go back to that breakdown I gave you, the discretionary, so the seating, I gave you a brief history. We only actually knew what the estimates were for the future transition costs for moving the seating between the modes as a result of the work we did this summer. So that came through effectively around the period before the start of the football season, and recognising that we had committed in the spirit of transparency, as you say, we committed last year that we would announce it this autumn. That's what we were planning to do as part of the total transformation costs. So we weren't sitting on that information for a long time before it came out. The announcement we'd made in summer 2015 with the 272 figure in it had made clear there was contingency, but we hadn't specified the number. And we did that because we need to hold a contingency and our contractors not to know what that is for us to be able to have any ability to negotiate and resolve outstanding issues. If they know what the pot of money we're sitting on, obviously our position would be much weaker, and I think everyone accepted that was reasonable at the time. So the only other two parts were the discretionary enhancements, as I call them, for the sort of improving the commercial viability of the stadium, which we had plans when we announced the 272 figure, but they weren't firm and they've been worked on really right through over the last 12 months. So those have been, but they weren't actually part of the transformation. They were sort of additional things that E20 commissioned. And the insurance and management, I suppose technically we could have included it. It was the 4 million we could have included originally, but actually when we announced the 272, we were answering a specific question, which was the value of the contracts for transformation. And that was the question we answered. So the seats we only knew latterly, that was the big change. The others were progressively going on, but we only really reached the end of the work, for this summer's events, and we always planned to announce them this autumn. And if you like, the leak slightly preempted that, but then the mayor's statement confirmed in the public domain.
Okay. Now, in terms of governance,
I think we did what we said we were going to do.
In terms of the governance, there's your organisation and
Yes.
the stadium management.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That looks after the day-to-day side.
Yes.
The finance side is you, or is it them? Do you grant them? I mean, they're a subsidiary of you, are they?
Well, no,
It's a joint venture.
No, it's a joint venture. So the important point here is that we're in a joint venture with Newham.
So it's a joint venture with Newham. So what's the relationship back with your main board then, and what's the monetary relationship between this? Do they draw down on a grant from you, or they make a business case to you, you empty your wallet?
Okay.
Is
so
that how it works?
there's two parts to the answer. The transformation is different to the future looking.
All right.
So the transformation was an LLDC responsibility. So under previous decisions from way back, it had been agreed that effectively under the GLA's auspices, that we would take responsibility for the transformation. Newham made a fixed contribution to that, so you may remember a 40 million amount. That was Newham's contribution. There were other contributions from others, including West Ham and UK Athletics and etc. But we held the ring, if you like, and therefore we were responsible for the transformation and had the financial risk. So it was funded through LLDC, went through Jerry's finance team, went through our books, and we received the contributions and we paid the contractors, etc. Once the transformation was complete, effectively this summer, E20's operational, as you said, exactly what you said, day-to-day responsibilities, E20 is a joint venture between LLDC and Newham have that responsibility. It's a joint venture that's owned 65% us, 35% Newham. So to the extent that E20 needs funding, that's the split of contributions. And then if it makes surpluses in time, as we hope it will long term, then surpluses get shared as well. So, but Newham's contribution was a loan which went through Newham's own governance, and there's provisions pertaining to repayment of that loan as well. So basically, if it needs more money, we both commit to 65-35, and that's what we'll be doing.
So your exit strategy will be from the stadium management for the joint venture, because it's not complete exit strategy, but in terms of that standalone entity to get on with it, to do it.
You're
I mean, it's
looking
never
forward
really-
to when we come.
Yeah, it's never really going to be like that, is it? Because
Well-
I think you said it, isn't it? So if we need some more money, there will be an element that will come from Newham, and there'll be an element that will come from your good selves if a business case can be made and you've got the cash to do it.
Correct. So that's how it is today. We haven't determined how, or if, or how, or when we would exit. I suppose, to state the obvious, we're a development corporation, so we're not intended to be here forever. That's not news. We've said that before. But quite what our exit from individual developments, venues, etc., looks like, we haven't. It's work. We've done some early work looking at it now. But how that will pan out for the stadium isn't determined yet. And again, I think the fact that the mayor has announced this review to look at the financial consequences of the decisions on the stadium may well inform the thinking on that, because ultimately actually that would be a mayor's decision.
Okay. One final question, Chair. I think we all, David, over the years we've crossed swords, we've also shared things together across the table. But look, we should make it clear that you inherited some of these issues. So Olympic Stadium, great for the Olympics, great for athletics. I think we can all agree on that. As we move to the next stage, multi-purpose stadium, actually no. If we could go back to a different point, either designing the stadium to be for a multi-purpose activity post-Olympics, we would have done so, presumably. Do you think now, with hindsight, that maybe we should have started again in terms of the stadium, in terms of the cost that we've put into this, in terms of the transformation process? Because it was a great venue for the Olympics, it's a great athletic stadium, but that's not what was required post-Olympics. And even though that's what it was designed at the time, as reality dawns on people about what needs to take place, what is your view?
Well, the thing I disagree with, I think it is. I think it's actually a great multi-use venue. So I've been to football, I've been to rugby, I've been to.
Isn't it? It's
absolutely. But I think it's not fair.
That.
Yes, so I think it's not fair to say it's not a great multi-use venue. I think it is. I think all the events it's hosted, and bear in mind, football, rugby league, rugby union, Race of Champions, motorsport, concerts. We've got 3 fantastic concerts next summer. I think it's been fantastic for all of those. More, I think it's been. So I do think it works fantastically as a multi-use arena, and we've been really delighted how it's hosted each of those different activities. So yes, so I think you're right. Obviously, at a cost. I think I think the right decisions have been made in the sense that and I would go back to what I said right at the beginning when we started on the stadium. It is an important part of the vibrancy, the visitor attraction of the area that goes with the rest of the regeneration. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that aspect. That if we want an area that feels like a new heart of London, Premier League football is an enormous global brand. I think if we can talk in those terms for a moment, in terms of image, in terms of rights, in terms of marketing, and in terms of perception of a place. And I think having Premier League football there is a really big benefit to the park and the area and Stratford and the surrounding communities, location, and attracting other businesses and other significant activity, whether that's universities, cultural, new homes and the new communities coming. It all helps, and I think it is a significant contributor. With hindsight, might you have made that decision in 2007 to build a multi-use one rather than the one that was built for the Games, which was demountable to a 25,000 seat bowl? With hindsight, you may, and that I can completely see may be a view, and I think that's the sort of thing the review will absolutely look into. But I would say the information available, as I believe at the time, because that was before even my involvement in the Olympics started, was there wasn't a football club who would commit then, so it would have been slightly speculative. It would have risked it being a white elephant. West Ham went bust, as you all know, in the intervening period, and the new ownership came in after that. So it would have been a hard decision to take at that time. So on the information available, you can sort of understand why that decision was taken. And I think you said I've inherited a problem. I do feel that. I think that's probably true. But it's one where I can understand the decisions were made at each point. And I think it will be interesting to see the review and what it actually now, with the benefit of hindsight, looks back and says, how we've got here in terms of the decisions that were made, late 2006, early 2007 about what should we build for the games. Then the subsequent decisions, actually yes, we are going to keep a multi-use venue in Legacy, athletics and football. I think if I look back now and look at that point, and you know there were those expectations made and commitments made sort of 2011, but what wasn't known was how it would transition between the two modes.
Yeah.
And you know that I think it will be part of what the review will look at. But there is that assumed a solution to move between being able to host concerts, athletics, or particularly athletics. There was a commitment to athletics and football from the new competition that was run then, when the solution to how to do that wasn't known.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got one or two sort of sweeping up questions, Dave, before we move on. Firstly, thank you for the breakdown of that 51 million, because up until today, I don't think anybody knew what the constituent parts were.
I think that's true.
So just to summarise it, the 21 million is for the seating. You mentioned 14 million was for better gangways, better lighting, the big screen that's there, toughening the ground so it could be used for different things. 4 million was spent on balances, so insurance, etc. 12 million, the contingency of 12 million was utilised and spent. Was that spent on anything specific, or was it just chucked in the pot for everything else?
When we announced the 272, we said we had a contingency. 12 million was the contingency we were holding at the time, but we didn't announce the number at the time for the reasons I said earlier.
Was it spent on anything specific?
The way we do, well, it was. Can I tell you now precisely what the way we build the contingency is not a lump we just put, if you like, as an allocation. It's built up from known risks. So we quantify risk in all our capital projects, and we say, what's the likelihood, what's the outcome if it happens, how much contingency do we need? And so it had been an assessment of risks that were known at the time and would likely to be needed. So I have to say I don't have the breakdown now, but again, it's something we could get.
Was 12 million the full contingency then for the whole project?
12 million was the contingency at the time we announced 272.
Okay.
And it
so
was
fully
and
utilised.
we used it. And what I described was the extra over, if you like, on top of that.
So in other words, then the worst case scenario on your risk planning is what turned out to be correct.
On those specific, well, I can't say it's the worst case scenario because we had all the issues with the seats that came through on top, as I described.
Yeah. Okay.
So on the risks, on
so
all the other risks, yes.
The
if we left out the risks, then the seats, then yes.
Yeah. So the 12 million contingency was set before you knew there was a problem with the seats.
Correct.
Okay.
Because when we announced 272, that was before we knew they had a problem with the seats.
All right. The way that you have packaged it today, and the breakdown that you've just given, and you're quite smooth at doing this. I'm not surprised, but it sounded very controlled, and it was all part of the plan, and it's all okay. And so it's all under control. That's how it's come across. The 51 million leaked into the public domain, and I am interested in how that got into the public domain, but I'm not going to ask you about it because it's for the purposes of this question, it's irrelevant. On the 1st of November, the Mayor, having heard this figure, announced that there would be a review, an inquiry into why the costs were going up all the time. 2 days later, the Chair resigned. If it was under control, and it was all part of the plan, why did the Chair resign 2 days after that announcement from the Mayor?
Can I take that in parts? First of all, I'm not saying it was all. Certainly didn't say it was all part of the plan. I mean, the seating issue and that extra 21 million we incurred wasn't something we planned or intended. It was caused by a contractor going into administration.
But that would trigger the resignation of your chair, though.
No. Sorry. So now I was.
Sorry, I'm being rude.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Okay. The chair chose to resign for his own reasons, for his own personal reasons, and I don't think I should go into that more than that. We did have a leak. There was an announcement about the inquiry, and following all those things, the chairman made his decision for his own reasons to resign. So I don't think I'd say absolutely for his own reasons.
Okay, so entirely unconnected with the fact that the Mayor had launched an inquiry into the escalating cost of the stadium.
I didn't say unrelated. I just said it was for his own reasons.
Okay. The way that this stuff has come out into the public domain, because you and I are veterans at this. We've been in these committees many times, and we've asked you about the cost of the stadium and retrofitting the stadium and preparing it for legacy mode, and the cost seems to be creeping up. And the LLDC stock answer is, well, we'd like to see that, but we can't because it's commercially confidential and we can't put it in the public domain. And there are reasons for that, which we understand.
think I haven't said that at all today. To be fair.
You haven't said that today, I agree.
I've asked you a question.
Well, if I might ask you if there's any more costs coming in. Anyway, so I might give you the opportunity to say that today. But the point is, though, that I ran through the summary of how we've gone from £250 million in 2004 to £752 million at the end of 2016, and how we've gone from the £429 million completion cost of the Olympic Stadium to 752, which is 323 million more. So 75% roughly of the build cost of the Olympic Stadium has been spent on retrofitting it to legacy mode. So you could almost build another stadium in that time. The way it's come into the public domain, piece by piece by piece, it's almost like death by a thousand cuts, isn't it? Wouldn't it have been better? Again, another hindsight question. If you could go back and say, well, actually, it's going to cost this much, and just give us the figure, wouldn't that have been better for the LDC than letting it leach out bit by bit?
Well, I think you're putting together things that are completely different, actually, with respect. The 429 was the cost that was incurred by the ODA to build the Olympic Stadium for the Olympic Games, and that had been, and these are decisions that go back to the Olympic Board and various previous administrations, but 10 or so years ago.
Yep.
But it was a decision made to build a venue that was suitable for the Games and then could be largely demounted.
Yep.
Largely temporary venue, demountable to a 25,000 seat bowl for athletics, because there was the commitment to the athletics legacy. There was no way at that time, because decisions hadn't been made about future legacy use, that the whole figure we're now talking about could have been announced. The announcements that were around earlier Balfour Beatty contract prices were specific about one contract, which actually wasn't all of the works. Now, with hindsight, could we have given a total budget for transformation? I think that is the issue where I think as a public body it is very difficult to give out a budget when you're having multiple contracts, dealing with contractors. There's a lot of work, complex work to do. And the scale and scope of this transformation, you said it was sort of 75% on top of the original. We have almost completely rebuilt the stadium. The bowl at the bottom, which was the only bit that was going to stay, has been sort of redeveloped to put in the seating system, and everything sort of above ground that was temporary has now been made permanent, with the largest roof of its kind in the world, massive enhancements to the structure, all the spectator facilities, the toilets, the catering, the turnstiles, all being put in permanent, and the seating system. So it has been completely rebuilt. Effectively, we call it transformed. So we couldn't have announced the total at a very much earlier point. I don't think we could. If we'd given a budget for transformation at an early point, we'd have been, I think, really weakening a commercial position. We announced the 272 as soon as we'd let the final contract, and that is exactly the same. I have to say, I did a lot of this on the Olympic Games budgets, releasing progress reports, media briefings, and we always announced budgets for projects once the final contract had been let and not before, and actually we were praised for our transparency on that, and effectively I think we followed the same practice here. So actually I think we have been pretty transparent. We did announce the 272 last year. That was genuinely the number at the time. Things have happened about the seating that have made that wrong. I think it is. I understand why you add them together. I can see that it's not wrong to add them together, but they are two completely different things. There was a stadium built for the Games. There was then a decision taken relatively soon before the Games to say, actually, no, we're going to change the plans for the legacy. We're not going to have the demountable. We're going to have a multi-use, full-scope stadium, almost unique in the world in terms of its ability to hold multiple events. And that is a different thing. And we announced the 272. We've now been transparent, and it came out in a way we hadn't intended, but we were going to announce the full cost. And that is where we are. I think I don't actually think we've been. I think we have been as transparent as we reasonably could be on this, and I think we've followed the same practice we followed in all the lead up to the Olympic Games in terms of financial reporting, when actually we were praised for our transparency.
Okay, there's a number of things there. The first thing is, the stadium, as I understand it, is fabulous. I haven't been to it in legacy mode yet. I went to it during the Olympics, and I went to the Anniversary Games. But I hear from Len here that it serves clean beer, which is good, and it has clean toilets and all sorts.
We would be delighted to host you if you would like to come out again.
Let's talk about that offline. I'm more than happy to,
In a capacity, the members of the Police and Crime Committee are coming. Members of the Police and Crime Committee are coming to watch operational arrangements around crowd management. It's a we would be delighted if you would like to visit the stadium.
I'm sure we can sort that out. The point that I was trying to make though is that the way that the people on the receiving end of the information that you have just given, such as ourselves, we're all very simple souls. This is a public asset funded by the taxpayer. It houses predominantly, I appreciate lots of things happen there as well, but it houses a Premier League football club. Now, rightly or wrongly, Premier League football clubs are seen to be extraordinarily rich. I realise that a lot of Premier football clubs, the way they run their finances, they don't have lots of cash in the bank actually. They pay their players, it's not as rich as you might imagine, but nevertheless there are eye-watering sums of money being bandied around, paying players, buying players, etc. And West Ham's contribution to this £750 million stadium has been £15 million, I understand, which is not a lot. And again, rightly or wrongly, people will focus in on that. But the way it's dribbled into the public domain, we heard first that there was going to be the contract to Balfour Beatty was £154 million to convert the stadium. Then there was an additional £36 million, which you came to one of our previous committee meetings and discussed. Then the 272, which you say was the final figure, and that went out to the public domain, then it went up by 51. So it creates the impression amongst the general public that it's more, then more, then more, then more, then more. It feels like Oliver Twist, please sir, can I have some more? And that can't be good. I mean, surely you would look back on that and think we could have done that differently.
I can see your point. I think you're almost criticising us for being transparent at different points. Look, if we'd known the seating issue was going to happen, we'd have announced a bigger figure before. And look, we didn't know that was going to fall out in the way it did, and therefore we announced a figure that's turned out to be an underestimate, for which, well, I can sort of apologise if you like, but I don't think it's our fault directly, but it's an unfortunate consequence of what's happened.
It clearly isn't your fault that a contractor went bust. There might be some questions around the due diligence that were done on that contractor though.
Yes, so due diligence was done on that contractor. They were publicly procured through an ODU procurement, and that puts lots of obligations on us, which were followed around evaluating their financial standing, their technical competency, etc. And that was all done, and again, that may well be looked at in the review, and we'd be happy if people want to look at that in more detail. But that was all done. But it was a complex task, and it's pretty much a one-off task because we were looking to retrofit a seating system into an already built stadium, and the contractor was unable to do that and failed in the task. I think in the way the information's been announced, we have tried to be transparent. That has meant we've made announcements at various points. For the reasons we've said, the numbers have gone up. I can see that people may react in the way you have, and that's, I think, part of the reason why the Mayor said there should be a review to look back. I think we feel we have tried to manage it as professionally and recognise the commercial dynamics, but also recognise the obligations on us to be transparent. And those things are often quite difficult things to balance in positions like ours, where you're doing large commercial contracts in a public sector environment where there's the obligations on transparency.
Okay, well, we will await the outcome of the review. Are you approaching that review with confidence?
Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful. Yes, I'm pleased it's happening. I think it'll be helpful for all of us in a way. Some of the things we talked about, understanding how we got here, and the decisions made at key points that have led us to this position. So I think it'll be really helpful in terms of actually what you just said about the public understanding and the sort of head scratching there must be a little bit of how did we end up here. I think it will be really helpful. So I think I'm glad that's happening, and I think it's something that will be very helpful.
So you see it as an opportunity to clear the air?
Yeah, and the record will be put straight, and hopefully it'll be a good factual, objective report. And I think I absolutely welcome it, and look forward to working with the team appointed.
Okay. Sitting here today on the 14th of December 2016, can you rule out any additional stadium costs for the foreseeable future?
So the transformation, the number 323, that was the final number. So
That's it.
Yes, the work's finished, and so that is a final number. The challenge we've got now is making the ongoing business work in the way, and we refer to the issues with the seating and making sure the operation is working as smoothly as possible. But yeah, the transformation is complete, so that is the final figure.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next part, which is funding the extra costs. Because at the Budget Performance Committee meeting in November, we heard that the increased costs will be paid for through capital receipts. Is that correct? That came from the Head of Resources at the GLA. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, yes, in high level, Jerry might pick this up in more detail, if only to give me... in high level, our contributions into E20 are a capital payment, and it becomes part of our capital plan, which we have long-term, we generate receipts which more than repay that. So yes, it goes into that profile.
Yeah.
Long-term receipts. So that depends then on future capital receipts. So there's not cash in the bank at the moment.
Correct.
Okay.
So at the moment we borrow from the GLA for our capital expenditure, and we borrow on the basis that we have capital receipts that are generated in future, largely out of housing developments and other development, that will repay that borrowing and generate a surplus on the back of that. So the capital contributions into E20 are part of that capital expenditure.
Okay. So when will the additional costs become payable? Upon receipt of the capital receipts?
So the costs have been, contractors have been paid for the additional cost, as in, you know, when their entitlement means they bill and we're happy to pay. The model that we have with the GLA is that we draw down, we don't hold very much cash reserve at all, just a working balance. We draw down from the GLA the net capital requirement, so any expenditure net of any receipts that have come in. In some years, that will actually end up paying money back to the GLA. So I think the budget that we've put in has, I believe it's 18-19, has a net repayment back to the GLA. So at any time, our borrowing is the net of our requirement less any receipts that we have, and if those receipts are in excess of the requirement, it goes back. So the overall long-term model gets paid back with a surplus over quite a long period of time, but it is projected. Well, the model goes out, as I said previously, to 2050. The majority of the, I think in the 2020s, sort of mid-2020s, the GLA gets repaid its borrowing, and then we're into surplus. I could confirm that.
Okay.
Before you approve.
Yes, that might be useful, because we've noted in the accounts.
Sorry, can I just? I think just so we don't treat the stadium. I suppose the point is it's not different from any other bit of our capital expenditure. So it's a capital item within a very large bucket of capital expenditure that's all funded from borrowing, all of which gets repaid from receipts. So it's not different to any other capital item, whether that's on stations or housing or universities that we might incur.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, in the published accounts of the LLDC in 15-16, it stated that you were planning on paying back 54.6 million in 17-18. However, 1 year later, you're not doing that. You've deferred that, and you're borrowing 47 million instead. So is this simply debt reprofiling?
It's not. So the two, I mean, there are changes in assumptions about the phasing of spend and of income. So we discussed earlier that the profile of the Chobham receipts had changed due to delays to close out phase one on the site, and that will have factored into those shifts. So the two things going on. One is any kind of reprofiling of income, and the other then is the reprofiling of capital spend.
Okay. Right, we're going to move on to our final session, which is next steps, really. Onka's going to lead us through that.
Yes, certainly. This is about what happens next. I think the last football game that's been played, it will be on the 13th of May 2017 by West Ham. And then 3 weeks later on, you're going to have a concert there. And this all depends upon you changing from the football mode into the concert mode. Do you envisage any problems with that happening?
No, so we did it within that time period this summer. So let me just get my points right. So after the Diamond League Athletics and before the first West Ham match, there was less than that time available, and we got the seats moved through in that period. We are appointing a new contractor, so I suppose there is a caveat that we need to get that appointment completed, and there will get sort of that's due to happen sort of early in the new year. and then they will have time to get familiar to manage that. But that should be a manageable timescale. So yes, we're not unduly worried about that.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and the other thing is this additional £51 million we were speaking about earlier on. The GLA's Director of Resources said that this additional cost will impinge upon your priorities when it comes to affordable housing or regeneration. Do you agree with that comment?
Well, it's I never disagree with the Director of Resources from the GLA. So that would not be a good thing to do. So it impinges in the sense that it adds to the capital profile in the way we discussed, and we've got to make sure that we generate receipts that are obviously more than sufficient to repay that. But what it isn't doing is changing our plans in terms of the regeneration that we're delivering and the investment that we're delivering, because actually it would be counterproductive, for example, to do less housing, because housing generates the receipts that help repay the borrowing, and are obviously both good from a regeneration point of view and good from a financial point of view. So I don't think the stadium is changing our plans. It's obviously there's a financial capital addition to our capital costs, capital borrowings that goes into what we repay. And if we were at the point where, were we able to repay our borrowings, that would create a material point where we had to really make sure we were not going to borrow that we couldn't repay. But we're not at that point. So in terms of our plans for housing, in terms of the new employers we're bringing into the area, where by and large we're not incurring capital, it's done through our planning and sort of regeneration activities. And the work of the park and venues, those aren't affected, and those are carrying on as planned.
Right, so the proportion of affordable housing won't go down?
As a result of the stadium, no, I don't think the stadium affects it. Obviously, the new mayor's policies we're very mindful of in relation to affordable housing, and I mentioned earlier, I think that we're looking at some of our future development sites to say, can we do more affordable housing and do it more quickly? To respond, if you like, not just to the mayor's policy, but the wider issues in London for the need for more housing, and particularly affordable housing. So we are looking to accelerate that and to do more affordable, but that's not a consequence of the stadium.
Okay, good. And I think earlier on you did answer the chairman when he asked whether there were any more conversion costs you can visit. But so there's a line in the sand drawn on that we shouldn't expect any more conversion costs coming along. No unexpected costs come along. So did I understand it right?
Yes, you did.
Great, okay. And can you also categorically rule out that there won't be any athletics events being hosted at London Stadium for the next 10 years? Can you rule out categorically that there won't be any athletics events?
No, there will be athletics. There absolutely will be athletics events.
I think that for better clarity, the question is badly written actually, so it's not Oncasful. It's can you categorically rule out not hosting athletic events?
Oh, I see.
Can you assure us that there will be athletic events? Yes.
So to start off with, we've got the World Athletics Championships and the IPC World Para Athletics next summer, which we're really looking forward to, and it'll be a major event. And look, we've got a long-term agreement with UK Athletics for them to have access. I've forgotten, is it 25, 30 years? I can't remember, 50 years. Yeah, so there's a long-term agreement with UK Athletics with an athletics window each summer when they have the right to host the athletics agreement. So that's in place.
Okay.
Can we just be clear? So the 0.3 to 8 million figure is the revenue. So you are contracted for some events, but if you don't want to reconfigure the stadium, then you don't pay that cost, do you?
Oh, correct. Yeah.
Right.
So if we didn't need to,
are we only reconfiguring the stadium just for our benefit for the athletics meetings, or is it for other events?
So the concert capacity is bigger with the seats back.
Bigger.
Yes, because you can more people can stand on the field of play.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
Okay, so it holds more people with the seats back, and therefore you can get more income and you can have bigger events and all the benefits that go with that. But that I think, if I sense where you're thinking of going, there is a judgment that could be made each year about whether it's worth moving the seats in the light of what the events. Well, so we've got the commitment about athletics, but for the other events.
So the commitments that you've got, just for us to understand.